Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is Focus Financial Partners 2.0, Inside Baseball from the new CEO on the firm's evolution. It's a conversation with Michael Nathanson, the CEO of Focus Financial Partners. I'm Louis Diamond, and this is the Diamond Podcast for Financial Advisors.
At Diamond Consultants, our mission is to help advisors live their best business life. We want every elite advisor to find exactly the right place for their business and their clients to thrive, whether it's at a wirehouse, a regional, boutique, or independent firm. As the industry's leading recruiters and consultants, we've transitioned more than $250 billion in assets under management in the past decade, and each year, 25% of transitioning advisors who manage $1 billion or more are our clients. If you'd like to talk, please feel free to give us a call at 908-879-1002. Are you a financial advisor who's curious about whether you're in the best place to serve clients or if there might be a better way to optimize your business for the future? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a new book that serves as a self-guided journey, walking you through the key steps that Diamond Consultants takes with our advisor clients, whether considering change or not. Visit diamond-consultants.com/thebook to learn more.
How the vision has grown. That's a headline on the Focus Financial Partners website, and there's a lot of truth in that statement. Founded in 2004 by Rudy Adolf, Lenny Chang, and Rajini Kodialam, the American Express alums recognized an opportunity to expand access to capital for independent advisors looking to achieve scale and increase growth, as well as monetize their life's work. In a conversation on this series in 2022, Rudy shared his vision with my partner Mindy Diamond, a literal history of the firm's role in transforming the independent space. A year later, Rudy announced he'd be stepping down as CEO, with Lenny and Rajini following suit, each to explore new endeavors. Today, Focus has grown to more than 90 partner firms in more than 38 states, plus Australia, Canada, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. Michael Nathanson was the CEO of one such partner firm, the Colony Group, when he was a guest on our show in 2023. Michael described how Focus was the right solution to help them grow their firm from $1 billion in assets to over $20 billion. The episode is a valuable case study on the power of finding the right equity partner at the right time, so be sure to check out our website for a link to listen in. Michael is now the CEO of Focus Financial Partners, taking the helm of a new generation of growth for the Focus ecosystem. In this episode, he talks about how the firm has evolved and how his own experience can serve to drive further growth. He describes the value of interdependence and how the concept plays into his vision for Focus. Plus, Michael dives into the Focus model, their strategy going forward, the future of independence, and much, much more. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get to it. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
So great to be here with you, Louis.
Yeah, great to have you back because your episode we did a couple years ago was one of my favorites. So we have a lot to beat here, but I'm confident that we can make something happen.
Well, you're kind to say that. Thank you.
Perfect. So to kick us off, can you share a little bit of your background and what led you into the industry and to the Colony Group in 2004?
Sure. I think it's good for people to have intentionality at a young age, if possible, around their career. And I think it's also good for people to have intentionality around taking cues from others around them and indeed from the universe itself in terms of where we go with those careers. So I had long wanted to be a lawyer, like my father before me, and I was very devoted to that. Wanted to go to a top school, top law firm, and do great work. And I did go to a top school, and I did go to a top law firm, and I had a great career as a tax lawyer. I practiced tax law for 13 years. And then I began to get interested in asset management and wealth management, began to build a base of clients that had needs that I could help them with from a tax perspective. Started working with firms from a corporate perspective, but also worked often on high-end tax matters for clients of these firms, and ultimately got introduced to the Colony Group. They were a client of mine for a few years, and I really liked the group of people and thought that they were doing something special. I thought they had a really special culture as well. I'm a big baseball fan, have been since I was a kid. And there were a lot of big baseball fans there. And we started going down to spring break together and watch baseball games and really connected with people there. And ultimately, they asked if I would come in and join them and ultimately take over the Colony Group as its CEO. And I thought long and hard about that because I was a partner at my law firm, which was a pretty big deal. At least it was for me. And that's the kind of position that people would kill to have. And I look back on it now and I think about the decision that I made. And sometimes I'm surprised that I would have done it. But I'm so glad that I did do it. And I resigned my partnership and I started out on a completely new career after going to law school and after spending 13 years practicing law, joining a small RIA that at the time had $500 and something million under management and 28 or 30 people, and went without any agreement in place and went to become their general counsel and CFO. And the rest is history.
Yeah, man, I like what you said in the beginning there, where you have to be open to other perspectives and to what comes your way. So, I mean, obviously with hindsight, that was the best decision you could have made in your professional life because you built the Colony Group when you were chairman and CEO into over a $20 billion firm. And you were running one of the top, if not one of the most well-known RIAs within the country. So clearly you did something right there. But I got to ask, I mean, join a $500 million RIA. It was also before the RIA space was as cool as it is today. There wasn't much awareness around it. What did your friends and your family think? Did people think you were crazy?
Most people thought I was crazy. And my wife was very supportive. And a few of my friends were supportive, but most people thought it was a crazy thing to do. In hindsight, what I realized was that I just had ultimate confidence in myself. I had confidence that if things didn't work out at the Colony Group, I'd be fine. I'd go and do something else. Just going back to my early days, I didn't even want to be a tax lawyer to start. That's another area where I just listened to others around me. I wanted to be a litigator or maybe do international. I had all kinds of aspirations for different things. The furthest thing from my mind was being a tax lawyer. But what had happened was Vicki Summers, who was at the time Larry Summers' wife, was a mid-level tax associate. And at the time, this was the early 90s, Larry Summers had to move to DC. I think he went to the World Economic Bank at the time. And ultimately, of course, he went to the Clinton administration and became the Secretary of the Treasury. But her moving with him is what created a vacancy. And then the firm asked, well, do you want to be a tax lawyer? And I said, well, I took one tax class in law school. It's the furthest thing from my mind. And they asked if I would try it. And it wasn't entirely clear that I had a choice. They did make it sound like a choice. And I did try it. And I actually loved being a tax lawyer. And if I had not been a tax lawyer, I would not have ultimately gotten to the place where I could ultimately go and lead Colony. And so I'm not someone, I like to quote movies, and there's a great scene in Forrest Gump. Have you ever seen that movie, Lois?
Of course, many times.
Yeah, great movie, right? So there's this great scene at the end where he's speaking to Jenny's grave and he's getting all emotional. And he says at some point, and I'm going to botch this, but he says at some point something to the effect of, he's quoting his mother and says that his mother always said that he had a destiny. And then he says, yeah, I'm not sure if we all have a destiny or if we're all just floating accidental like on a breeze. Maybe it's both. And maybe that's really a good lesson for all of us. Just ultimately, it's up to us to see the opportunities around us and decide which ones we want to seize. And ultimately, if we have confidence in ourselves, then maybe it's not as risky as it looks.
Well said. I couldn't agree with you more. And I like what you said too. I mean, you can try it. And if it didn't work or wasn't the right fit, it's not like you were going to be out of a job or you couldn't pivot back to what you were doing. But obviously there was a intrigue into doing something different, probably something more entrepreneurial. And the rest, as they say, is history. So Most of our interview today will talk about your new role as CEO of Focus Financial Partners. But just to set the table a little bit, and for those who didn't have the privilege of listening to our interview back in 2022, can you talk a little bit about the growth of Colony Group from 500 or so million when you joined to $1 billion firm to being 20 billion plus when you stepped down to become the full-time CEO of Focus?
Yes. When I got to the Colony Group, it was already a great organization. I've often spoken about the evolution of personal services organizations from practice to collaborative to business to enterprise. I would say that at the time that I joined Colony, it was somewhere between a collaborative, which is a collection of practitioners sharing resources, but not always operating as a single cohesive team, and a business, which is a group of practitioners, typically with people supporting them, where everyone is operating under the same vision, mission, set of values. They have the same purpose. And so I think the Colony Group was somewhere between those two things. And I had been hired to help professionalize it. And that's a lot of what I did, bringing in people with skill sets to help us professionalize it, putting in place processes and procedures, recognizing the importance of all of the people there. And every one of them was and still is very important to the organization, but also helping the company move toward a place where it would be sustainable even without some of those key people. That's how I define an enterprise. A business, I've already defined. An enterprise is a sustainable business. And that's what I wanted Colony to be. I had big ambitions for it and saw the opportunity pretty quickly in the space, how fragmented it was, that there were no big players. At the time, the banks and wirehouses and trust companies dominated everything, and you could see the opportunity. And so the first couple of years I spent just trying to build a platform to get to a place where we could then take the next step. And then from there, it didn't take a lot of time to realize that we were going to need to start coming together with others rather fast. That could be through strategic hires or through mergers. Back then, you didn't see a ton of mergers in the industry, but I knew that's what we needed to do and started working on some mergers. And I spoke with a good friend of mine, Bob Glovsky, who was then the CEO of Mintz Levin Financial Advisors, and went down the road with him to try to get them to merge with us. Wasn't able to get it done. Ultimately, it fell apart over some of the financial aspects of what we were trying to do. But also, as I look back, as experienced as I had been from a legal perspective, I don't think we as an organization had the experience and the credibility to get a big deal like that done. This at the time would have been merging $2 billion firms. That didn't really happen back then. And so I then moved on to try to do another transaction. That transaction also fell apart. And at that point, realized it was time to get some help. I had been speaking with Focus Financial Partners, like everybody at the time. They had been calling on us. And we had gone down the road a bit with them in 2008. And then everything fell apart. The world changed. And so we pulled back and said we needed to focus on our clients. But ultimately, what I realized was that we did need help. And that's, I think, one of my strengths as a leader, recognizing when I or we cannot do something on our own and recognizing the need to work with others. And so the next time Focus came calling, we said, let's try this again. And we did. And we closed our deal on October 1st, 2011. And 9 months later, we closed our first merger, and that was with Mintz Levin. And then the rest was history. We then went on to very selectively think about all the areas of need as we were trying to build an enterprise, a sustainable business that could last for 100 years. And so through a combination of organic growth and inorganic growth over the next several years, we did build one of the largest and most prominent, and in my opinion, one of the best RIAs in the industry. And I'm very proud of it. And if I could just say one thing to your listeners, The secret to it all, the key to it all, was embracing interdependence. This independent industry of ours is great. If we think about independence as meaning having our loyalties geared toward our clients, well, that's great. That's what the fiduciary standard mandates, and that kind of independence is a great thing. But Louis, I think that ultimately the organizations that can best embrace interdependence and learn how to work with others, open themselves up to being challenged, not become so obsessed about what you're in control of. And if you're willing to embrace interdependence, ultimately, that's the key to it all. I think I talked about this during my last interview with you, but one of my favorite business books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that book is really all about, the 7 habits are great and I live by them, but that book is really all about acknowledging that when we're born, we're completely dependent. We can't take care of ourselves. Ultimately, at some point, we become independent, and most of us cling to that independence. And we never let it go, and it holds us back. But those of us that can learn how to embrace interdependence, learn how to work with others, give something up by way of control, give up that security of knowing it's all about you. If those people that can do that are the highly effective people, and the same can be said for organizations. The organizations that can embrace interdependence are the highly effective organizations.
I like that. Yeah, and in your last interview, the concept of interdependence was absolutely one of my favorites. And I think just to make it a little bit more tangible to our industry, are you saying that independence is the opposite of interdependence? Or am I wrong?
No, I don't think it is at all. If I were to name the movement that I'm describing, I would call it interdependent independence. I actually think that it's just a question of how we define independence. So we talk about the independent advisor, and the independent advisor is typically an advisor that doesn't work for a wirehouse. Then we get into standards of conduct, Reg BI versus the fiduciary standard. So with respect to being independent in that regard, I think the interdependent RIA is a subset of and the interdependent RIA is a group of people that has said, you know what? It's time for us to do more to embrace others. Now, you can do that through mergers, but you can also do that through strategic partnerships. We do that by having a different perspective on our clients and not taking our clients for granted and understanding we're interdependent with them. Or we do that by being interdependent with our team members and understanding that our team members usually have a choice and that we're interdependent with them, and that we might just be better if we can learn how to embrace them as team members and learn from them and not treat team members as people that ultimately are there to serve you and then there to be moved on. So I think interdependence is a subset of independence. And I actually think that ultimately it's the key to remaining independent.
Super interesting. Maybe to pull on that thread of the last thing you said, the way that I'm hearing this or understanding it is you have the option as an advisor. You can run solo or run your own business, have your name on the door, have control over the P&L, put toner in the copier, et cetera. Or you can embrace interdependence, which means either relying upon others to do more or going through a merger with a company like Colony or many others where you're giving up control over certain things, but you're able to tap into intellectual capital and collaboration and not being reliant on just yourself, but on others. And I would love to just pull on the thread of what you said at the end. So how is it that interdependence is necessary to retain independence in the long run?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that we have to all remember what our purpose is. Our purpose is to serve clients. And if you are part of the independent advisor movement, you are serving clients under the fiduciary standard. So if you are a group of 3 or 4 people that have started an organization and you're truly putting your client's interest ahead of your own, which is the definition of being a fiduciary, you are proactively mitigating your conflicts of interest. If you believe that if 3 or 4 people that you're able to provide everything your clients need, well, okay, then maybe you're just fine doing that. I don't think at 3 or 4 people you're going to be a sustainable organization, and you need to think about your ability over the long term to serve those clients. But I think many people would say if you're that group of people, you may have a great core of people that truly have their heart being fiduciaries. But do they really think that they're able to manage money better for clients with a total of 3 or 4 people, maybe one completely dedicated to asset management? Or by embracing others? And again, that could be many ways. It could be through mergers, could be through outsourcing, could be through partnerships. But I would submit to you that while I wouldn't say this is a theoretical, so I don't mean to say that you can't do everything possible for your clients with 3 or 4 people, but I would tell you it's more likely you can do much more for your clients if you're working with others. And that can be scary for people because, again, it could involve some loss of control. But I would also tell you this, Louis, control is an illusion. None of us are fully in control. We just think we are. It's a perspective we have. If you're good at what you do, you are not in control. Your clients are in control. Your clients are everything. They're in control. We all answer to someone. So if you're that 3 or 4 person organization, I would tell you that I think it's more likely that that organization will be able to continue to do what it wants to do on behalf of clients if it embraces interdependence. And that's what I mean by that.
I like it. It sounds like you got a thesis for a new book there too. So I think it's a fascinating topic because there's so much talk around the industry about we have to merge in order to gain scale and add new services and X, Y, and Z. But I think you're right, where advisors get to decide how much control they want to retain. And I'm with you that no one's fully in control, but there are plenty of advisors and business owners who they want to control the things that they'd have to give up in a merger, whether it's marketing or picking every position in a client's portfolio. But I agree that if you have a vision of creating a sustainable business and doing as much as possible for clients, that it's really hard to run solo or run with a small team, given all the consolidation that's happening across the industry.
I would like to see organizations spend more time thinking about the fiduciary standard in all aspects of their business, not just how they manage money or bill for their services. And I think that independent advisors have an obligation to apply the fiduciary standard at all times, including when thinking about mergers.
Yeah, I guess that's right. If the objective of a requirement of a fiduciary is to always do what's best for clients, then you always got to be thinking about, is there a better way to serve these clients? And if the answer is yes, then it's incumbent upon them to make something happen, to change the dynamic on the ground. I want to talk for the rest of the interview about focused financial partners, where you earn the right to be the successor to the founder, Rudy Adolf, in 2024. I think most people have heard of Focus. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it, and Focus has gone through a couple of different iterations as a private company, then a public company, and now private again. So again, similar to the first question, like just foundationally, can you describe what Focus is and what it does?
Sure. There's a temporal answer to that. In other words, it depends on what time period you're speaking about. Focus was founded in 2000 by Rudy Adolf, Rajini Kodialam, and Lenny Chang, all 3 brilliant people, brilliant entrepreneurs. And they had a vision for bringing together some of the world's leading advisors. And so for Focus did its first transactions in 2006. And from the days that it started to do its first transactions and bring in partner firms, what it was largely an aggregator. It was a firm that went out and selectively acquired ownership interest. And it actually acquires 100% of the company, but only a portion of the economics. That was the legacy model. And over the next several years, Focus, in fact, did aggregate about 90 wonderful organizations, largely in the US, but also some abroad. In addition to buying registered investment advisors, it also got involved in the business management space and was able to acquire some of the world's greatest business managers as well. And business managers, for those of you who don't know what that is, you can think of it almost as a family office kind of service, typically for celebrities. Though it goes beyond that, business managers often engage in royalty accounting, concert touring, and other services that celebrities often require depending on the type of celebrity. And this is what Focus's model was. Focus had some thinking around what it called value-added services, which were services that the holding company at Focus thought might be valuable, and it would go and create some of these or outsource some of these and then provide them. But the ultimate model was one of almost complete autonomy, where you had 90 firms that under their agreements with Focus had some obligations, reporting other kinds of obligations. And you can imagine around things like budgeting to Focus, but generally we're operating autonomously. And that was actually one of the big selling points for Focus. You can come and get a good multiple and sell yourself to Focus. You can still keep some of the economics going forward, and you don't give up any control. Well, that model worked pretty well because ultimately Focus became the first of its peers to go public. And it went public in 2018. It was a successful public offering. And Focus did well, probably could have done maybe a bit better, but did pretty well as a public company. And investors made money, and the principals of Focus, I think, were pleased. And all along, clients were well served. So that was the model. But ultimately, and we can speak later about going from public to private, but ultimately, as our private equity firms changed over time, we had long been supported by private equity firms. What ultimately CD&R and Stone Point saw was an opportunity to evolve the model. And what I mean by that was to change the approach of Focus, whereby the firms that were operating autonomously and wanted to continue to operate that way, okay, well, we'll let them do that. They have the right to do that. But they saw an opportunity and a willingness around many of the Focus firms to join forces. And what they realized was that there was an opportunity to now embrace what I'm calling interdependence and enable what they call a coalition of the willing to come together and to operate better together, to operate at scale together. So today, what Focus looks like is we have one segment that is economically wholly owned, where we have bought out the remaining economic interest that was not owned by Focus, and where we now can coordinate better and bring firms together, merge them together. We've done this in the form of initially three hubs. And those three hubs are Colony, Kovitz Investment Group, and SCS Financial. And then ultimately, we added a business management hub, Gelfand, Rennert, and Feldman. And most recently, we added a Canadian hub, Cardinal Point. And so now we have 5 hubs. And what we have been doing is utilizing those 5 hubs to join forces with willing partner firms that want to join with them and be able to operate at scale, to be able to operate in a way where they can do more for clients and more for advisors. And so that's one model. And then the other model is the old traditional Focus model, which is still in existence. We meet advisors where they are. So this is, as I said, it's a coalition of the willing. No one's being forced, nor could we force anyone to join the hubs. But I will tell you that the pace of people wanting to join has been extraordinary, even more than I could have imagined. perhaps even more than CD&R and Stone Point could have imagined, because in only a year, we've now aggregated in this new segment, which we call Focus Partners. We've aggregated over 50% of our earnings in 1 year.
Wow.
And so it's gone really fast. As for the legacy part of our business, my hope is that over time it will evolve, and that increasingly those firms, while they still have chosen the model that they initially signed up for, which is their right, that they will embrace utilizing the solutions that we create in platform form. So what I mean by that is that as we create back office solutions, for example, and are able to operate at scale from a back office perspective, as we build world-class aggregated investment platforms where we have not 3 or 4 people, to use my earlier example, but say 300 people ultimately working on the best possible investment platforms, our hope is that those firms will increasingly see Focus as a platform and think about how they can get better solutions for themselves and for their clients through our platforms.
It's a fascinating strategic shift. Like it makes a ton of sense that the 90, 91 firms that Focus initially had, that needs change over time. Folks want to retire. To use our concept earlier of interdependence, that firms that were very successful might think they need something else to take it to the next level. So it makes a lot of strategic sense, and consolidating folks under this hub model, but still embracing the legacy model of letting folks retain their independence if they so choose. It seems like you can hit the market 2 different ways. But it is, or it was, still a major shift for Focus, where the perception in the industry is it's trying to build multiple colonies or Buckinghams, which is run by the now CEO, Adam Birnbaum of Colony Group. So what would you say to folks who say that Focus is changing and folks who don't join the new hubs are going to be left in the wilderness a little bit?
Well, I think that the whole world is changing. So I'm an economic Darwinist. I think that just as species that cannot adapt to changes their environment are naturally selected for extinction, I think the same can happen for organizations. What I would say, though, is that I do think that there are multiple ways to embrace interdependence. So within Focus, most of our larger firms have, of their own volition, decided that they can best evolve to meet challenges in the environment, including increased competition, increased need to spend on technology, increasing need for alternative exposure, and increasing need to deal with very large wirehouses and banks that have substantial advertising dollars. They have seen this as the path toward evolving to meet those challenges and become the leaders of our industry going forward. But I think within Focus, the firms that have not yet chosen that, they still are able to embrace solutions that Focus can offer and hopefully meet the challenges through that kind of structure. Now, outside of Focus, I just think every firm has to think about, and every group of advisors has to think about not how successful they've been for the last 5 or 10 or 20 years. They have to think about how are they going to continue to be successful for the future. And the future is very much in motion. Things are changing fast, evolving fast. There's a lot of competition, and people need to be mindful about what they're doing to be relevant in 5 years or 10 years. And my strong suspicion is doing what we are doing right now is not going to be enough. People want more service. They want better service. They want different kinds of service. They want lifestyle services now. They want the most sophisticated investment offerings. They want full, easy technological access to all their holdings at any point. They want private banking. They want trustee solutions. They want simplification from a tax perspective and estate planning perspective. They want one-stop shopping. Don't ask me about these things. Just look at what all the consultants are saying when they go out and interview people. This is what the consumer wants. If we either evolve or we don't evolve, but if we don't give clients what they want, someone else will.
Well said. And I think it's really smart that for those who don't want to join one of the hub firms, that Focus is investing in building out its own support platform. So instead of just being the financial backer or the in-house M&A arm, that firms that want to retain a certain level of independence are able to tap into more of a shared services model and can serve clients better, or maybe they'll realize that they need more, in which case maybe they'll do more mergers or merge or sell to one of the hub firms. So I think the strategy is brilliant. It makes a ton of sense.
That's exactly right. If you think about what our strategy is, it starts with a vision. Our vision is to be the leading fiduciary advice company in the world, a company whose clients experience it as a company built just for them, and whose advisors and other professionals are equipped with every capability and resource that only the largest institutions in the world can offer. That's our vision. That's what we're trying to create. And as we do that, we know that we have our work cut out for us, and we have strategic pillars that we have been working on. So consolidation, integration, organic growth, something that a lot of people forget about, but is very important, continuing to pursue inorganic growth. But as you just said, shared services. So we have invested in a team around shared services and are building capabilities like tax capabilities, bill pay capabilities, estate planning, trustee services, lending capabilities. These are the kinds of shared services that we know clients are looking for, and we look forward to providing them throughout Focus so that people can utilize them for clients, but also corporate shared services like recruiting or training and development or compensation consulting or compliance consulting, practice management generally. These are things that organizations need, and we look forward to providing those kinds of services to our non-hubs, as well as, of course, to our hubs. And then another part of our overall plan is what we call Focus Investment Partners, which is building and we've already built it and launched it, a world-class alternative investments and private strategies platform. It's now accessible throughout Focus, and we intend to ultimately make accessible outside of Focus as well. But this was part of our plan as well, creating these shared service capabilities, including on the investment side.
I think it's brilliant because you can provide these services that firms are going to have to buy or hire into regardless. You can do it at scale. And it's also a huge value add when you're trying to compete against all these different firms that have popped up that are trying to aggregate or acquire or merge folks in. It's, hey, we'll take these things off your plate and you can serve clients better by leveraging what we've built and that we can build really well and with scale. So I think another very smart decision there. So I had a question for you just about control. So you were CEO and chairman of Colony Group for a long time. You killed it there, grew it into the firm that it is today, and decided to step down from Colony. And now your longtime friend and amazing industry visionary, Adam Birnbaum, is running Colony so that you can take the larger role within Focus. What did it feel like to step down from that firm and give up control over Colony? It must have been pretty challenging to do.
It was challenging. It was hard emotionally. I grew to love the people at Colony, the clients of Colony, got to know many of them. Very proud of everything that Colony became. And I also know that nothing lasts forever and that ultimately there was going to need to be a transition. I had been thinking about an internal transition plan. But again, though, the universe sends us these signals and gives us these opportunities. And Adam is a close personal friend of mine, and he's very much the other part of the dynamic duo in a lot of what we do. And we love working together. We talk almost every day. And we had long dreamed about bringing our firms together. The Focus model just didn't really support that kind of thing back in the day. We had talked not only about bringing our firms together, but maybe some of the other firms within Focus together with us. where we had conversations with their leaders and we knew that they were interested as well. And so ultimately, when the opportunity came to me to lead Focus, that was an opportunity that I simply had to take. I see Focus as the largest player in the industry, and I live my life to make a difference in others' lives. My personal mission is to live my most extraordinary life by helping other people live theirs. I fulfill that mission with respect to my family, my friends, my philanthropic endeavors. And I certainly want to fulfill that mission through my work as well. And I felt that I did that at Colony. But ultimately, to have an opportunity to lead the largest player in the independent space was the opportunity I saw of a lifetime to have a positive impact on many people. And so that was a no-brainer for me to do that. I had to leave Colony to go and seize this opportunity. And yes, that also meant that I was serving as CEO of Colony, but I was having conversations with Adam, and it didn't take long to realize that we were going to ultimately be able to merge Colony and Buckingham together. And Adam was the perfect successor for me. Not because he's the same as me. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when they choose a successor is that they look for someone who's just like them. And Adam and I definitely share the same passions. We're both very driven. We both have big vision. We both want our companies to play on a much larger scale and do much more. But Adam does things a little bit differently. He's probably a little bit more folksy than I am. He's probably a little bit, he's hardworking and hard charging. He's probably a little bit less intense than I am. And I think he was ultimately just the best possible person for this. And he's been extremely well received. It's a big job, managing a lot of egos, a lot of people who have had a lot of success and built great companies and bringing them all together and getting everyone to work together. It's a big job, but I think Adam's been extraordinary at it. So I still sometimes feel a little bit sad not being at Colony just because I don't get to see those people as much anymore. But I have zero regrets. I love being the leader of Focus, and I love the fact that the company that I once led is now in Adam's capable hands. And I'd also say this. Yes, Adam succeeded me as CEO, but he's surrounded by other extraordinary leaders at Colony and Buckingham. And to say that it was a succession of one person to one person would be to downplay what really happened. It was really a succession of multiple leaders at Colony to even more leaders at not only Colony and Buckingham, but also the other firms that have joined forces with Colony and Buckingham. And there are some wonderful people that are supporting everything that Adam is doing now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like having the ideal successor or team of successors maybe made the decision easier. But I'm with you that if you're following your passions, really the why for your life, that being able to make a larger impact at the helm of Focus lets you multiply what you're doing across 90 plus partner firms at the time and now fewer, and also can still interact with Colony, which is really interesting and cool to have the opportunity to still be involved there, but you just let go of control over certain things to try to do things better.
Yeah, but one other evolution in all of this is that, as you heard me earlier, Lewis, about what Focus was and what it's evolved to, Focus really was a holding company in the past. It was active in terms of trying to help firms, but it was really a holding company. And what Focus has become over the last year is the headquarters of something larger. And Adam and I use the term convergence as we describe the firms coming together. And now with our Focus Partners model, where the firm that had been Colony and Buckingham and GW and Wade and Gratis and InterOcean and all the great firms that merged together, that firm is now Focus Partners Wealth. And the way I think about it now is that there isn't a lot of separation. Sure, there's regulatory separation. We're only allowed to provide investment advice through the RIA known as Focus Partners Wealth. But that's really a business segment of the broader Focus now. And so I work at the headquarters, And Adam is a direct report to me as CEO of Focus Partners Wealth. And as I said, we speak every day and we work together differently than we used to work in the past, but I'm still very much involved in what's happening at our largest hub.
Very interesting concept. So let's talk a little bit about some of the motivations or the benefits of taking Focus from a public company on the NASDAQ and reporting quarterly to investors and doing earnings calls, et cetera, to becoming private with the transaction in August of 2023, where private equity powerhouse CD&R and Stone Point took Focus private. I know you're not part of CD&R or Stone Point, so you can't talk to their direct motivations, but now being the CEO of Focus, what do you think the benefits are of being in the private markets rather than the public ones?
Well, I think that in order for them to execute on the strategy, they almost had to become a private company, as the public markets are much more focused on quarterly performance. The public markets will limit your utilization of debt, which is very much utilized by most private equity-backed players in the independent advice space. And CD&R had a vision that was very similar to the vision that I just spoke about, that I had long had and that others like Adam had. And in order to implement that kind of vision, it was going to require some significant investment, a willingness to step back away from certain areas in favor of others. Ultimately, if you think about our strategic priorities right now and what they have been for the last year, well, it's to create new and greater capabilities for clients and advisors. That's probably number one. And that's the kind of thing that takes investment. It takes people coming together, working toward new things, succeeding most of the time, but failing some of the time as well. There's a lot more freedom to do that. And then next would be to accelerate growth. And then lastly would be to improve efficiencies. Those are our three strategic priorities. And they have been for the last year during this phase where we're evolving our model. And as we do that, it does require investment. It does require a focus on consolidation and on integration, which pays off in the long run, but there are short-term expenses to that. From a financial accounting perspective, given Focus's model, there are some accounting implications on a short-term basis that the public markets might not have appreciated. These are short-term, only 1 year. But just in terms of how we account for the transactions whereby we buy out the management companies of each of the firms. And so by going private, it gave us the flexibility that we would need to implement our plan. And it doesn't mean in any way that we were surrendering from the public markets. We may very well go back at some point. I don't know. We're not even talking at this point about what that next step could be. What it does mean is that if we do return to the public equity markets, we will do so with a much more compelling story, a story that speaks to an organization that is much more integrated, that looks more like a company than an association, and that grows regularly and better, both inorganically and organically. So if we do return to the public markets, it'll be a much more compelling story. So I think so far, so good. It was a good decision. Another thing we get is that we have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how we do transactions. When we were a public company, it was a bit more challenging to utilize our equity as part of transactions. Now, as a private company, we're able to more efficiently use our equity in a tax-efficient manner, and aligning the people that we're doing business with is a very important part of what we're doing and an important part of our plan. In fact, much of this is really all just about better alignment.
Love it. If we're writing a Harvard Business Review case study, like the famous one that was done on Focus a number of years ago, this seems like a textbook business school study, and it makes a ton of sense from a financial standpoint and all the reasons you laid out. But what about the feeling that you have as CEO or some of the legacy partners have about the change of moving from firms operating under their own ADVs, their own brands, and really being left as independent as they wanted to be to now this more integrated model? Do you worry at all about what folks feel about things changing as they are?
Well, I think that CEOs that don't worry about things are putting themselves in a position where they might wish they had. So I worry about many things. I have great confidence in what we're doing, and I'm always mindful about challenges. What I would say first is, in terms of the firms that have stepped up and said, we want to join, I think we have nothing but happy customers at this point. Everyone seems to be very happy. The equity story has been very compelling. We've had substantial growth of our equity. It's public knowledge that we actually did our first return of capital or distribution last year. All of these things were made feasible by our model, which is a much more compelling model. So in terms of organizations that have joined forces with the hubs, I think people are quite happy. And as for the others, I do think that there's probably some concern. We have gone out of our way. I personally have gone out of my way to make it clear that no one is going to be forced in any way to join forces with the hub. And more importantly, we will continue to support to the absolute best of our ability every firm that does not want to join a hub. We still own a large interest in each of those firms, and their profitability and sustainability is very important to us. We will continue to invest in them, build platforms for those organizations, help them do their own mergers. And so we'll continue to support them. But what we need to do, and what I personally need to do, is to continue to articulate the vision. We need to continue to articulate why we are doing this. And the reason we're doing this is because we're listening to clients. We're listening to prospective clients. We're listening to the industry around us. We're seeing what's happening in the competitive landscape, in the marketplace. And we believe that this is the opportunity to lead the way and to find that balance between a fiduciary client-first approach on the one hand, and on the other hand, having the kind of capabilities that only the largest organizations in the world can possibly have. You look at what Morgan Stanley is doing around AI. Well, we can look at that and say, well, nothing's happening right now and they're still trying to figure it out. Probably true. But over time, that's an important place to be. And if you do not have some level of scale, how can you play in the AI space? Same thing can be said around investments. The same thing can be said around concierge type services. So people have to look at themselves, make decisions as to what they think is best for their clients and themselves. I think over time, you'll continue to see more people flock to the hubs. And I think that over time, there will still be some firms that remain autonomous and still very much valued and respected by everyone at Focus.
Well said. I mean, look, as the leader of a company, of a lot of people that you have to keep in mind, but it sounds like you have so much passion around the vision and what you're trying to accomplish. And with that passion, you get people who sign on and will run through a wall for you. And of course, with anything, you have thousands of people that are reporting to you or are relying upon your leadership in some way. There's going to always be some naysayers, but as long as you keep the conviction that what you're doing is right and it's for the right reasons and that the end result is a net positive, it seems like the right strategy at the right point in time.
I think that organizations need naysayers. It's not always comfortable hearing that, but I'm grateful to the people that are on board and full of energy about our strategy. And I'm also grateful for the people that are cautious and say, well, not now, maybe later, or, well, did you think about this? I think we have to hear all those perspectives and be able to take them all into account as we move forward. I think everyone is playing a role in the evolution of Focus. One of the 7 habits of highly effective people is to seek first to understand and then to be understood. So I think it's important that we understand these perspectives.
Well said again. Let's talk a little bit about the ongoing evolution of focus. We've talked about some of the strategic changes in your vision, but I think a part of it too is I know you just unveiled a new logo. You've alluded to some of the new branding with
Yes.
Colony and Buckingham and others coming under the Focus Partners moniker. So can you talk a little bit about this change and what it signals?
Yeah, it signals that we're becoming not an association of firms, but rather a company. And as we do that, it was important that we co-brand. And so, yes, we've launched a new brand for our hubs. And the firm that was the Colony Group and Buckingham and all the great firms that merged with those two firms is now Focus Partners Wealth. And our ultra high net worth hub, SCS Financial, has become SCS Financial Focus Partners Family Office and OCIO. Kovitz Investment Group is now Kovitz Investment Group, a Focus Partners firm. Gelfand has become Gelfand, Rennert, and Feldman Focus Partners Business Management. And Cardinal Point is Cardinal Point Focus Partners of Canada. So we're bringing the brand together as we work together. Now, these firms have not been merged together with each other. That is, the hubs have not, but the hubs are now operating as much as possible behind the scenes together on what we like to think of as a common chassis to the maximum extent possible. So we're now utilizing the Focus brand in different forms to come together as one company with multiple business segments. Our logo continues to be the gemstone, which has long been part of our logo. The change we made to that was simply to reflect all of the firms that made Focus what it is today. And so the color scheme, we tried to utilize something from every single firm that's part of Focus. And overall, the design is intended to reflect our collective energy and our collective capabilities. And what we're looking at is our brand is our identity. It's our personality as an organization. We want that brand to reflect this vision that we have of being the leading fiduciary advice company in the world, a company whose clients experience it as a company built just for them and whose advisors and other professionals have every capability and resource that traditionally has only been provided by the largest institutions in the world. This is what we're seeking to show with our brand. We want our brand to reflect our values. Our common values include the fact that we are resourceful as thinkers. We are responsive at heart to the needs of our clients, our team members, and our communities. And we are imaginative in spirit in the solutions that we provide. We want all of that to be reflected in our brand.
It's so interesting. I mean, a lot of advisors who listen to this show either went through the hard work of creating a logo and a brand, or they have a vision to do it just the same. So it's really interesting to hear how it all comes together, especially if someone decides not to use their own name.
But let's speak about that, though. We aspire to have a brand that's known outside of the industry and not just within the industry. And the reality is that there's probably one, maybe two firms in our entire industry that has a brand that's recognizable, not just on Wall Street, but on Main Street. And what we're hopeful is that with this new paradigm's a cliche, this new model of being able to operate truly at scale, but under the fiduciary standard. There are only a few firms that are even in a place that they can even argue that they're doing that at this point. To be able to do that, though, and build a brand around it, a brand that we hope is recognized as a brand by high net worth, ultra high net worth, institutional investors, all of our existing and potential clients. That's really what we're trying to do. When you speak about brands for the smaller RIAs, they do build brands in their local communities. They do build brands for within their industry in some cases. I'm talking about going beyond that and building a brand that's recognizable everywhere.
So I know you're a student of business and you read a ton of books. I always follow, at least when you're at Colony, you used to do like your annual list of your favorite books. I used to love that. Got a lot of good ideas. Is there a company outside of financial services or wealth management that you look at as the inspiration, or like, okay, if we execute on this vision and this strategy the way that we think we can, that you hope to be like that firm in another industry?
Yes, there is. And the answer is Google. Probably not what you would have expected me to say. I have great respect for many companies out there, but I read How Google Works, which is one of my favorite business books. And I've been a student of that company for a long time. And they just do so many things that I think we could all learn from. And part of that is what they have been able to do is create a whole new mindset. That book begins with Eric Schmidt talking about how we human beings are taught from birth what cannot be done. We're taught from birth that we can't fly. But actually, if you really put your mind to it, there's pretty much anything you can do. Sure, there are physical limitations, at least for now. But what they did at Google was they changed the mindset and they got people to realize that they're capable of pretty much anything if they truly set their minds to it. And so that's the mantra that I try to follow as well. Nothing's impossible. Or as Justice Brandeis once said, everything in the world worth doing was previously declared impossible. And if we think about the art of the possible, that's how we'll ultimately achieve true greatness and true legacy, to be part of something. I'd like to think that we are creating the Google of financial services right now.
I like it. Yeah, look, even if you're 1/20th as successful as Google, I think you did your job well.
That's right.
2 more questions to take us home. So 5 years from now, when we definitely have you on the show again, what do you think focus looks like? Or put another way, what does success look like to you 5 years from now?
So we will have completely transformed ourselves from an association of firms into a company. The economically wholly owned segment of focus will probably be 80+% of our business. We'll still have a smaller subset of firms that are not part of that, but they will all be supported by a world-class, state-of-the-art platform that they can use to leverage and make themselves the best possible versions of themselves and do great work for clients. I think that we will universally be seen in 5 years as having built a new model, a new level of scale not yet achieved in our industry, one with many thousands of people working together and working toward a common goal, which is serving clients to the best of their ability under the fiduciary standard.
Love it. Very clear and concise. And I agree with you. If you can accomplish that, I think you'll be pretty happy. Last question. This one's more just out of personal curiosity, but I think many folks who will listen and find themselves in the position of being accidental CEOs who are growing an enterprise, and many didn't even have the vision of where it could have taken them at this point in time. But I mean, you went from running a massive company in Colony Group to now an even larger company, a much larger role. So how do you have time to do everything? Like, how does a day in the life look now for Michael Nathanson today as it did a year or two ago when you're running Colony?
I don't have time is the answer. You'll get nothing but candor from me, but I don't think I'd have it any other way. And what I mean is that I have to prioritize. There's never a day that goes by where there aren't things that I have to do or that need attention. But to me, that's the sign of a healthy business. And that's also an indicator that I'm doing my job well. I think if there were a point at which I were not constantly on, I have to question whether it's time for me to move on and find someone else to take my position. So one thing that I've learned is that at a certain level, everything we do is about ourselves. We create these circumstances around ourselves where we open ourselves up for this kind of intensity in our lives. And so I own this, and it's what I wanted. It's what I believe in. It's how I feel like I'm making an impact. So I'd say that. And I'd also say that I don't remember a single time since the 1990s when I first got started practicing law that I've had any downtime. And I think that I have to own that. That's just the nature of the way that I work. My friend Adam would tell you the same thing. I think he would concur with that. And then I would just say that the idea of work-life balance, that's an interesting idea. I think that ideal is out there and can exist for those who need to make it exist. In particular, someone who has younger children or other obligations. I'm at a place in my life where my children are older. They're great. My wife works. And so I'm at a place where I can do what I feel like I need to do to maximize my impact and do what I think needs to be done for our company. So for me, it's not work-life balance that I think about. It's a lifestyle that I've chosen. And many CEOs will tell you that, accidental or not. They'll tell you it's the same thing, that it's just the life of a CEO of a larger company that you're always on. And it's about prioritizing things. And so that's what I do. I prioritize things. I know what my priorities are. My priority for the next few years are going to be building capabilities, accelerating growth, improving efficiencies. And if you scroll back, those are the exact same priorities I just listed before. And my priorities for 2025, I'm going to be thinking about organic growth. I'm going to be thinking about integration. And I'm going to be thinking about focus, returning in force to be one of the leaders again in external mergers and acquisitions. During the last year, we were focused much more, as you can understand, internally, but we intend to return to the external markets in force. And so those will be my three priorities. I just know what my priorities are. I stick to my priorities, and anything falling within those priorities, I have to be on top of. Other things, I flag them. I have a great team around me that supports me, and I get to them as soon as I can.
I love that. Yeah, you've been incredibly consistent about the vision and the mission, but I love the concept of focusing on the priorities. And you didn't list 20, you listed 3. So my guess is your filter, your screen, is this going to align or help me achieve one of these 3 priorities? If it doesn't, it's a prime candidate to delegate or eliminate.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. And
having 20 priorities means you have no priorities.
Yep. I'm with you. I'm glad that you made coming on the show an important enough priority, because this has been a fascinating episode. It's also it's really interesting to hear directly from you. You could hear the passion in your voice about what you're trying to accomplish at Focus 2.0. And just your thinking around interdependence is always a great reminder. And taking the big leap from what was probably a comfortable and fast-moving role as CEO of Colony to a much larger role as CEO of Focus. And I'm very excited to have a front row seat to see how you execute on this very compelling and clear mission. So I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I know there are a lot of people that are relying on Focus and relying on me, including all the people that got Focus to where it got. There are a lot of people that are looking at us and relying on what we do and where we're going. And I'm always mindful of that responsibility.
No doubt about it. And I think too, just hearing directly from a CEO, like anyone, accidental CEO, aspiring CEO, et cetera. I mean, I think there's so much to learn just from how you communicate your thoughts and boil it down to clear and concise marching orders for how you're going to live your own business life. So a lot to take from this, and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Louis. Thank you for having me.
As a financial advisor, you hold yourself to the highest standards of integrity, honesty, and credibility. You are successful because you take your professional responsibility seriously and are dedicated to your clients. But are you living your best business life? Are your goals aligned with your firm's, or could a better option exist? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a book written with you in mind. It's a self-guided journey that walks you through the key steps that we take with our advisor clients. This strategic thought process and roadmap to professional self-discovery is designed to help you ask the right questions and think critically and objectively, whether you're considering change or not. Learn how to get your copy at diamond-consultants.com/thebook.